Well, thank you, Mr. Dipankar Ghosh, for joining us today. And it's a real pleasure to have you with us at L&D today in this office. Now, you've had a long, successful career. Before we come into that piece, we'd like to talk about when you were as a child, right? So, about your childhood, where did you grow up? How were you as a child?
So, I grew up in a city called Durgapur, a city in West Bengal where my parents worked for a public sector company there, and that's where I grew up. My schooling, till class 12, we and our family grew up there as a nuclear family with a lot of great memories about the city.
I'm absolutely sure. Tell us a little more about your parents and your family during the stages of growing up.
So my parents have primarily moved to this city. They are primarily from West Bengal, from Kolkata, but they moved to this city primarily for work. They were working professionals. My father was working in actually the Durgapur Steel Plant and the Steel Authority of India as an engineering professional, and we are three brothers and sisters. I have two older sisters, and yeah, our entire life has been spent in that city.
That's it. Interesting. As a student, what were your interests while growing up?
So yeah, so that's why I keep talking about the city I grew up, the school I studied. You see, the city was very cosmopolitan in nature, and unlike many other thousands and thousands of professionals from across the country came at that point of time in that industrial city, one of the first industrial city post-independence, who had come and stayed to work and live with their families. So all of us were without a family lineage in that city. So our families were friends and our friends were families, and such was our school culture as well. It was a potpourri of cultures, various people from various states and all of that, which actually had put a lot of emphasis on focus beyond education and studies as well. We had a lot of focus at that point of time in our school, lot of for co-curriculars. So my interest obviously as usual was less in academics and more in co-curriculars. I was extremely interested in quizzing, in debating, and obviously lot of sports. We had opportunity to play various kind of sports, which today when I see my kids in Mumbai, I don't think they're as fortunate enough.
So it was a different era,
different era. Life probably was much easier, and you could do many things in a day. Today I think people are struggling with time, particularly when I see myself and my kids.
I think for kids today, life is more digital.
Digital. They would read less, play less. That mobile was not there in our life, neither to our parents. So we had a lot of me time with our parents, which I don't think we give that much to our parents as children as well. Though we keep blaming them, I think we are all part of that same crime.
Right. So during your schooling years, what did you want to be when you grew up? Any particular profession you had in mind?
No, not really. Not really. You see, when you go up in an industrial township where large-scale industries are there, one common thing that you want to be is an engineer, because all the big things that happens in that city is for an engineer. There is no other role model per se. So there was this huge family pressure of being an engineer, which I was very sure I will not be. I wanted to be everything else other than being an engineer, unfortunately. So you grew up thinking you will be a doctor, you will be a pilot, you will be a sportsman and all of that. But I think for the longest period, I really thought, since I kind of grew up, I thought I would go into academics, or I would do something in geology, the subject I studied. I was very fascinated with the field work, discovering something, and the adventurous nature I thought is associated with the subject, going to field trips, staying in distant caves and everything. So that was very exciting for me, and I thought that would be my calling. It didn't happen, that's a different story, but I think that's how your aspiration changed over a period of time.
And interestingly, you did your BSc honors in geology and earth sciences, and then you went on to do your MBA in HR, right? So how did the switch happen from geology to HR?
So I think I'm still very fascinated with science as a subject. but reality struck you late. When I was doing my graduation, I realized that probably going into the MBA route would be much more exciting in terms of having a quick career or maybe an early job, which many middle class family people have to face, that you have to now get into earning, to be very frank, which probably MBAs give you much quicker than getting into academics and going through the rigmarole of years of study without end result may take some time. I think that was the initial trigger. I do not think we thought a lot about why MBA and why not, because that was also the trend. I think many of us went with the trend because that was in to be in. And that's how you start getting into business management course instead of going into the normal route of masters in a science subject.
True.
You know?
So HR happened
and HR also, I think, happened much later. Okay. You start your first year course studying everything, at least that was our coursework. We were not required to choose our specialization before or major before second year. Right. In first year you study all the subject. One thing that really struck me, two things in MBA classes, most of your colleagues are trying to either move to marketing or to finance or to operations. Those were the three major areas of study in MBA schools at that point of time. One, I realized I have a lot of interest about understanding how human mind work. I was very fascinated when I was, of all the initial subjects that we studied in MBA, one subject that really struck me was the OB, the organizational behavior. And the OB is something I really felt, this is something I haven't ever studied, and this is really making me exciting. And then I realized there were people, there were professors who kind of explained what this subject would actually mean. And I found, bheer kam hai, let me try out this subject. Because everybody else seems to be running for marketing and finance. I think unknowingly I made a great choice. It was not so thought through at that point of time, but now I think I was also lucky to have chosen the subject which I later found a lot of interest with.
True. I think what that also signifies is that it's okay to not have an aspiration very early on in life. I mean, you can just go on with the flow. And
so I think the basics has to be right. Your aspiration set may change because you are not knowing everything. So what I also emphasize is that while yes, what I want to do may have changed, but the basics haven't changed. And what are the basics? The basics are, you need to be doing your academics right. You should be getting exposed to a lot of other things which make you a rounded professional. Your value system should be in place, which I am fortunate to be with the kind of family and the background that we have. I think if those three things are in place, that you are continuously learning, you are learning a lot of things, you are doing it sincerely, you have a purpose, and then you have a value system in place, then I think moving from one field to other doesn't make much of a difference.
Interesting. Now, your experience, you come with experience in various sectors like manufacturing, customer services. So from an HR perspective, what are some of the sector-wise challenges that you had to encounter in your career?
I like to believe that human being and human resource are agnostic of industry. It doesn't really matter whether I am working for a BFSI or a shop floor executive or I am a banking salesman. I am a human being, and my need and aspiration and what I need at the end of the day are more or less same. But does that mean that you need to approach human resource in the same manner irrespective of the industry? Definitely not. While the overarching framework of human resource are same, and how human being react in a situation, the Pavlov dog model, if I can talk about, doesn't really change. But you need to balance out the different facets of the sub-functions of HR depending on which industry you are in. In a manufacturing sector, I think it's very important that you you put focus on the efficiency and the discipline parameter when you are looking with human being. Can I do that when I am operating with the R&D center of my, so I am giving this example of Tata Motors where I worked, but I have also worked in the shop floor, and I have also worked with the 1200 people R&D center where there are innovators, scientists, designers, painters who are our employees, who are trying to think how would a car look like after 20 years. And on the other hand, you have a set of people in the shop floor who are manufacturing assembly line vehicles. The way you deal them is very different. You have to understand the space that a designer would want. You can't tie them up in a 9 to 5. You can't go and tell them, why didn't you punch in at 9 a.m.? That's not what he's supposed to do. But you need to ask that question when you are in shop floor. So I think that shift happens across sector. When you are dealing with sales, again the approach is different. So that's how I would say, I would rather want to say functions need various HR input rather than industries. A BPO customer service and a FMCG customer service would be primarily same. Not much of a difference. It's not the industry but the function. That there the nuances will come in.
So what you're saying is the human in the human HR remains common. Your approach changes towards whatever you're faced with. Interesting. Now, did you have mentors early on in your career, and how did they help in molding you professionally and personally?
Yeah. So I think mentor would remain a very important thing for most of us who probably have done a bit in their professional career, because I don't think and as I speak with many others, we were fortunate enough to have family members or academic backing which can give you that kind of an input which mentors give. Mentors have actually lived their life which you are now going to live, which you never come trained, and they make all the difference. And I personally think I had been very lucky with my mentors. In all my critical phases of my life, when I started my career as a rookie management trainee, when I moved to a people management role, when I moved to a strategic business management role, every time I was fortunate to have people who made those very, very, very subtle shift in the way I look at things, telling them this is what, and many of them are industry stalwarts. Very proud and happy to kind of have got the opportunity to work with them. And I think mentoring is a very, very key aspect.